The reason why I bring this up is because with the product launches, you don't necessarily have to order stock because you don't want to invest, let's say $50,000
Yeah,
into opening a brand in Germany for it not to work, and then you lose fifty thousand
right.
dollars. You can probably invest 10, 15, and only once you see it work, you can start ordering stock, ordering inventory, and start scaling.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. The world may have come closer due to the penetration of internet, but the e-commerce practices and consumer behavior remain very different in terms of the payment methods, email open rates, and ad performance. The Europe market in particular is very different, with market patches that behave very different. And brands that want to scale in the Europe market must have a comprehensive strategy, not just to grow, but to sustain. In today's episode, our guest, Renus Cummins, shares his insight into the nuances of different European regions and their e-commerce practices. He also discussed differences in payment methods in North America versus Europe, the payment methods that you need to accept to support different regions in Europe. Finally, he discussed the best practices for launching new products and how email could be an effective tool given the higher open rates and success in the European regions. Let me introduce Renus to you. Renus started dabbling in business from the age of 13. He started with graphic design, creating YouTube banners for Call of Duty sniping clans. Later, he used his design skills to create his own fitness personal brand. By the age of 17, he had grown it to 16,000 followers. At the time, this page was bigger than any corporate brand's social media page in Latvia, the country where he is from. Currently, his team is managing email marketing for stores, generating $100,000 to $2 million in revenue. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Renus, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's up? Super excited to be here.
Hey, I am super excited as well because, the region you are from, obviously we have not covered that in the previous episodes, and it's just so fascinating the amount of commerce that is happening in these regions, and amount of regulations that are going to be uniquely different in those regions as well. So we are going to have a lot of fun discussing all of that. Just to kick things off, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus?
Yes, for sure. I'm gonna keep my personal stories short so we can dive into the tactical stuff. Long story short, my name
Yeah,
is Renus. I run a agency, JR, alongside my co-founder.
yeah,
We do email marketing. We work with e-commerce brands. A lot of brands who are doing a couple of million a month. We're scaling up, trying to get closer to nine-figure mark. And a lot of the people we work with are selling in Europe. So Germany, Netherlands, France, Sweden, Latvia, Lithuania, as well as the US. So we see the differences that are happening in the US markets, European markets, sometimes even Middle East, so on and so forth. But the way we got here is it all started when I was 13. When I was 13,
yeah,
that's when I started mowing lawns. I became 15. I became like a fitness influencer, and I
yeah,
kind of kicked off this passion for, in my case, marketing and selling online,
yeah,
because it was so fascinating. I thought to myself like, oh, I don't need to go out and maybe get like a $1 million loan to open up a retail shop. I
yeah,
could start things and do things online, and the cost to start was much smaller. Um, and I kicked off. I started off in Latvia, the country I'm from.
yeah.
Very early on, you realize that you can't make a lot of money here. So then I went off to other markets, primarily US, also some places in Europe,
Yeah.
and that kind of had a snowball effect. And we kicked off and we grew into the agency we are right now. We're around 50 people right now.
That's very cool.
Yeah, managing around 80 clients, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah.
Very, very interesting. Amazing. So, yeah, great story there. By the way, 13 years, I had no idea what I was doing back then, to be honest. So good for you that you started so early. Obviously, then you are going to have a lot more time to do a lot more interesting things in your
Yes.
life, which is perfect. So, obviously, we are going to be discussing about all of these regions. But before that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask every single guest. And that is going to be, Renas, your perspective on business growth.
Business growth is important in my eyes, but my main thing I focus on is,
Yeah.
can I grow a bottom line? I think it makes no sense, for example, for you to scale, let's say, from 10 to 30 million if your bottom line stays the same. A lot of the
Exactly.
valuations in e-commerce, they're done by the bottom line, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's been this obsession over revenue, I've noticed.
Yeah.
So if you can focus on growing bottom line, not revenue, I think I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Scaling in the simplest way possible. I'm all for that. A lot of times brands overcomplicate it. They try to either, well, yeah, they try to make things difficult when they could just focus on, for example, selling their one main product, one main SKU, or if they've
Yeah.
tapped out their one main SKU, they can work on creating two, three different SKUs. I actually had a conversation with people who run Weekend Digital, and they
Yeah.
said the brands that can scale to, the difference in brands maybe spend 50K a month on ads versus brands that spend 500,000 a month on digital
Yeah.
advertising. That is their offers, that there's their product market fit. So before you really focus on growth, you need to nail those things down on your
Yeah.
unit economics, and then you can scale profit, not just revenue.
Yeah, could not agree more. I think it's the bottom line that really matters. A lot of brands and people focus on vanity metrics as well as the revenue centric metrics, which is obviously needed. Without that, you're not going to get
Yes.
bottom line. But the ultimate metric is
Mm-hmm.
probably going to be the bottom line that really matters. So now let's dig deeper into these regions, right? So do you want to describe a
Yes.
little bit more in terms of how the market differs overall in terms of Europe? We have done a couple of episodes in the past, and we know that typically the things that we had discussed in those episodes is whenever, let's say, if a brand that is trying to penetrate the Europe market, the first thing probably is going to make sense is probably Germany is the first country that they target in Europe. And I don't know if you share the same feeling. Maybe you can share your perspective as well if that is the right strategy or not. So that is what they had mentioned, just because you can cover a lot more countries. And then you had mentioned one more point, Europe as a geography, that you are going to have very small countries and the market is going to be very small in general. So in one country when you start, you can quickly outgrow that market, and probably even the smaller businesses are probably going to be present in 3, 4, 5, 10 different countries, and that's very unique about Europe market. So, what has been your observation overall?
Very good points. I would agree. So you can start with the DACH market. So the DACH
Yeah.
markets is Germany, Austria,
Yeah.
Switzerland. They speak the same language. So if you have a site that you, for example,
Right.
translate from English into German,
Yeah.
you can advertise to all those markets. And why not?
Yeah.
To be fair, you
Yeah.
have
More the
a higher
merrier.
scale. Yes, yes, yes. And German market, they are pretty big.
Yeah.
It's Germany itself, I think, is 86 million.
Yeah.
So it's not like you're just gonna start scaling ads and you're gonna tap out. German market, you can scale to quite a high level.
Yeah.
The biggest difference that people need to understand, and this goes for Germany specifically, but for most of Europe.
Yeah.
The biggest difference in Europe and US is credit cards here are not as popular. In the US, a lot of people buy stuff with credit, meaning
Yeah.
they don't buy stuff with their own money. In Europe, we use a lot of debit cards. There are credit cards here too, but a lot of people, like, you have to imagine them buying stuff with their own money. They feel the
Yeah.
pain of the money going out of their account. I think that's one massive mindset shift people need to realize. And also, like,
Interesting.
going from the simplest things is the landing page structure and your advertising structure. If you advertise to the US, it cannot be
Yeah.
the same. The way you sell in the DACH markets, Germany in particular, is a lot of times you kind of tell them, like, hey, this is a product. Here's why, it has high status,
Yeah.
for example, showcasing newspapers where it's been featured on. these are the results we've gotten, these are the features, and then you make decision. You don't want to have like something like too aggressive countdown timers, so on and so forth. It doesn't really work well. You want to be more laid back, give them all the information they need, and let them make the decision. That's kind of like from the German and like looking in the Europe market, the big things that you need to keep in mind. I would say moving forward with that, the simplest markets to go into are Germany, Netherlands, Sweden. Netherlands also includes Belgium. I would say stay away from France. The reason why is I've never met anyone who's not French and who has cracked into the French market. It's very difficult. You need to have perfect language there. You need to a lot of times restructure. And it's like running another department for advertising. And to be fair, French market is very competitive. They have a lot of people who crush it with their own e-commerce brands. I'd rather go to Germany, Netherlands, and Sweden because you can achieve higher profitability there. When you go into these markets, you have to keep in mind the most important thing: payment processors. How are the people going to pay for the product? In the US, you have a lot of credit cards. You have maybe sometimes PayPal, Afterpay, so on and so forth. Europe, for the most part, you have Klarna. So Klarna is going to be in all those, basically all the markets you're in. You have cash on delivery, which is more for Balkan countries, Eastern Europe, Greece, so on and so forth. Turkey, cash on delivery is very important. So that makes it a bit more difficult to squeeze in those markets, and also tracking, your profitability. Going back to the markets you should be starting with, Germany, you have PayPal, Klarna, and credit cards. Those are the biggest payment methods. For Netherlands, you have Ideal, Klarna, and credit cards too. Most of these payment methods you can get through a platform called Molly. You can just go there, you'll see everything and how people pay. Sweden is pretty similar. Credit cards in Klarna. Klarna is a Swedish company, so that's why they take pride in it. And then Eastern European, like Poland, Eastern Europe, Poland, you have cash on delivery. A lot of times you have bank transfers. We like to pay with bank transfers. That's overview there for kind of like getting started. Not talking about marketing, just talking about setup and getting things rolling. One thing I do want to mention as well to as last note is a lot of times it's easier to start in these countries than you might think. You might think like, oh, we have foreign languages, it's difficult. The main things you need to figure out how to translate are your landing page, your advertisements, and then customer support. Also with landing page and advertisements, fairly straightforward. You can get voiceover actors from Germany. You can have a very, very good copywriter you can find even through Upwork and whatnot, and have them rewrite the text in German so you can get things going. You can start testing it very, very quickly and very, very effortlessly. When it comes to customer support, there are a couple of ways to go about it. If you want this the cheapest way possible, the cheapest way to start is by using a tool called DeepL. So Deep, so like DEEPL.com. You get some very good quality translations, and you can have your same customer support team translate the customer support tickets and answer with this. It's not going to be perfect, but to get started and test out the market, that's the cheapest way you can do it. Later, you can hire students. You can hire a customer support team from that country. But to get started, that's a very easy way to do it. Anything else besides that? If you are FDA approved in the US, you'll probably need CE certification. But with the certifications, I'm not the most familiar. Generally speaking, Europe is more strict than the US would be. So you would need to talk to suppliers, look at the certifications. For most products, they would have both approvals, except if it's like a food product, I guess. So that'll be the only thing. And Europe is going to be a bit more strict in that regard.
Okay, so some very interesting layers there. And obviously, the payment processors, when you look at them, I mean, there are so many. And one of the things that you mentioned is that Europe market is going to be slightly more laid back. And I don't know if conservative is the right word or not, but seems like the way you are describing, it's probably going to be slightly more conservative, that they are probably going to be spending money with their debit card, as you correctly pointed out. But then you have the Klarna that is actually becoming really big overall in the Europe. geography, and that is actually picking up in the US as well. So I don't know,
Yes.
I mean, what are the drivers, why these payment methods are becoming so popular when, if you really think about this consumer population, they did not really catch up on the credit card, but they are okay with the payment methods. So do you have any sort of perspective in terms of why there's a giant leap that, okay, you
Yeah.
are not
Hmm.
okay with the credit card,
Yeah.
but you are okay with the payment method that is going to be completely online, completely entrusted, I guess.
Yeah.
Uh,
So just fundamentally, number one, it's easier to pay with credit on site, right? So if you have a payment method like Klarna, you don't have the
yeah,
money, for example. Like sometimes in say European markets, Eastern Europe, you have people who earn less, so they might not have the money, or let's say you're not comfortable with paying everything up front.
yeah,
Like people have fallen into this line of subscriptions that's
yeah,
typically from car payments. Cars are
yeah,
not being sold in terms like, hey, this is how much you pay, and then we're gonna divide it upon months. But they're sold in like, hey, you're gonna pay $100 or a
yeah,
thousand bucks for next, let's say, 36 months.
yeah,
You think to yourself, oh, cool, I'm gonna pay 1K a month, where you might be overpaying by 10K, for example.
yeah,
That's what it really comes down to, people being used to these subscription models. And then on site, when it says like, hey, instead of buying the product for $100, you can
yeah,
buy it for, let's say, 25 and pay it over 4 months.
yeah,
That seems more attractive, right? And the reason why credit cards aren't as popular in Europe because for the most part we don't have the same benefits. I know like Western Europe, they have Amex and whatnot. Eastern Europe, we don't even have Amex.
yeah,
And generally speaking, the market, we've been used to debit cards in
yeah,
here. It's just ingrained. Like, for example, in Germany, your business suffers if you take too much credit out. They don't want you to over leverage. They don't want you to risk too much.
yeah,
So businesses don't pay with credit cards. Mostly they pay with credit cards as well. If you take on too much credit, if you have
yeah,
too much, like not even like even available balance in credit, the
yeah,
government is gonna like start asking you questions, and there are gonna be some issues. People don't want to bother with that. That's why
yeah,
they don't take out credit cards. They don't use them as much. Whereas on the flip side, Klarna and those tools, they're unregulated. People don't
yeah.
care that much about them and the how they're being operated.
So there are some very interesting layers there, and I want to peel some more, in that. So let's say if you look at the US market or the Canadian market,
Hmm.
uh, here as well, if you look at the businesses, when you mentioned businesses don't pay using credit card, here, if you look at business to business transactions, they are primarily happening using either check or some sort of EFT,
Hmm.
so that is going to be your bank to bank transfer. For bank to bank transaction, they don't necessarily use credit card. And the reason why they don't use credit card, unless it's going to be really small amount, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, then they can probably pay using credit card. But for the most part, the reason why businesses don't pay using credit card is going to be the upcharge that they need to pay based on the
Hmm.
credit card, and that's a hit
Yes.
for the businesses. That's why they don't use that. But as a consumer, okay, as a consumer, for me, let's say if I'm shopping, so there are two or three different things. Number one, I don't have to worry about the hit. Okay, businesses are taking the hit. Obviously, the price of the product is going to be increased, but that's how the society works. So, as a consumer, I don't really take the hit. And that's the reason why consumers here are comfortable paying using credit card. That is number one. Number two is going to be with credit card, you at least get one free month, if not a couple of months. Okay, that you don't have to spend your cash. So you
Paying it
have
off.
a
Yeah.
little bit
Hmm.
of room there in terms of your cash management. And then you also get the statement, so you sort of know what is going to be your monthly spend. If everything is going from your bank account, sometimes it becomes difficult. So you have that flexibility as well. The third point that I would like to mention is going to be when you look at the consumer behavior is going to be the security. For example, let's say I'm not too sure if I feel comfortable sharing either my debit card or the bank account, because debit card is going to be directly connected with the bank account. Credit
Hmm.
card is not. So that's the security layer as well. So I don't know. I mean, see, are consumers not the same, and are businesses really driving these trends in the Europe that they don't want to accept the credit card because then the products are going to be more expensive?
No, no. You can people they accept the credit card. It just typically consumers would pay with a debit card. So just the mindset is different on how you pay. Like in the US, you would have like a lot of people who would just buy things for the sake of buying things, whereas
Yeah,
in Europe, people are a bit more conservative with the money. They're just
yeah,
like the like one mindset shift you might need to take into account while advertising.
yeah,
But businesses do take credit cards, and like in that point, the same benefits are also in Europe, but
yeah.
it's just like people don't use them as much.
Okay, so very interesting. So overall, let's say, the other comments that you have mentioned in the previous conversation was that overall the landing page experience, right? So one thing is going to be really the language and the translation that is going to be super critical. Whichever country you are selling to, obviously you
Mm-hmm.
need to take care of that, and that is probably going to increase significant overhead for the business when you are trying to attack these market, because you need to analyze that your product categories are going to be profitable. So maybe talk
Yes.
about a little bit more about, are these the only factors, only the language or the translation, or are other some other factors that need to be considered while designing the landing pages, as well as maybe talk about some of
Yeah.
the product categories as well that are going to be slightly different in the Europe market than the US market.
Yeah. I would say probably the biggest one is not being as aggressive with your marketing.
Yeah,
That's probably going to be the biggest one. If in the US you have like huge countdown timers, like huge buttons,
yeah,
arrows, something like that, people in here they're going to think it's a scam. Like if you, the best way to think about this is to compare US radio ads to
right.
European radio ads. US radio ads, people they're super loud, they're all into your face, blah blah blah, like buy this now,
Yeah,
now,
yeah,
now. Whereas in Europe, it's a lot more laid back. They're a lot more laid back, and they're giving out the they're generally speaking, they're a lot more laid back. And that's what advertising here is. You can obviously try and test more aggressive stuff,
yeah,
but quite often doesn't end up working, especially in Germany. In some markets, like Balkan countries, Eastern Europe, you can go a lot more aggressive as well with like, some D2C products,
yeah,
which to be fair are not typically the best quality. You can still do that and have that work. But Germany specifically and maybe Netherlands, not so much. At the end of the day, what's important is for you to test out and see what works. The issue that has happened in Europe is a lot of countries have had massive scams happen to them. For example, Netherlands, they have had scams where people have these buy one get one free shops,
yeah,
where they, for example, sell a mountain bike for 100 euros.
yeah,
You pay through Ideal, unless it's a bank transfer, you can't do a chargeback.
yeah,
Uh, the business gets the money. They either don't ship the product, or they ship an image, which is like a
yeah,
printed out bike, just so they have a tracking number.
yeah,
You have to be aware of those, and like if you make the site look too sketchy, if you don't look branded enough,
yeah,
people might think that you're selling that. The same thing if maybe you have a product that might have a
yeah,
patent, or you're selling a product that's being widely drop shipped. Keep that in mind. There are literal groups of people where once they find dropshipping stores, they put in the domains of those businesses, and then just people just flood the comments, flood the page with negative reviews, so on and so forth, because they've had a lot of negative experiences. And this might even be like you might be having your own product that just became like a dropshipping winning product,
yeah.
and you're gonna suffer through that as well. That's just something to keep in mind. Some like specific things you might not know unless you've been in the market or you're in the market.
Exactly, exactly. Yeah. So some great comments there. So now I don't know if you're going to have any sort of stories that you might be able to share to just illustrate the process, how the growth is going to be or how the penetration is going to be in the Europe market. So do you have any stories
Hmm.
of any specific brands that, sort of try to target different regions, and then, how their payment processor strategy was when they were trying to incorporate? And I
Yeah,
don't know if they were sort of went all in
yeah.
with everything. Yeah,
I'll just go through simple steps. So like payment process is fairly straightforward. You can apply it to Mali,
yeah,
Mali.com. You can
yeah,
apply it to Klarna directly.
yeah,
I'd start with Germany. So the DACH markets. So
yeah,
Germany, Austria, Switzerland.
yeah,
Take your site, adjust it in English to where like
yeah,
it's selling more through benefits, more through social proof,
yeah,
and not as like in a more like a less of an aggressive tone.
yeah,
Make sure you have like very simple design, so like three colors, four max,
yeah,
very clean,
yeah,
more standard, high quality product pictures. Then you can go on Upwork or even hire like a translation agency.
yeah,
have them translate it for you. Ideally, they should have some copywriting experience.
Yeah.
You can do the same thing with your advertisements. Take picture ads that worked, take video ads that worked, take old video ads that worked, and
Yeah.
just translate them into German and start testing once it's up and running. Yeah, payment processors should be fairly easy to get. Sometimes if it's a bit more difficult, you might need to open a European company. You
Okay.
could open up a German company
Yeah.
or something something else in a different country. You will need to apply for a VAT number if you're a
Okay.
European company.
Yeah.
If you're not a European company, uh, it was a different term for it, but it's like a universal something something number. I don't know
Huh.
it by heart, but if you talk with your accountant, you tell them like, hey, look, we
Yeah.
need to we need to work in the European markets. We need the Europe the US equivalent of a VAT number, or the VAT number non-US businesses can get.
Yeah.
That's because in Europe, every product you sell with 21% tax. This is not 21% tax, but you sell with VAT, which is anywhere from like sometimes even 16% to 23%.
Oh, wow.
And yes, and you have to keep that in mind. This tax will need to go on your product price.
Huh.
It doesn't work like it works in the US, where let's say you buy a product for $10, you buy it in California, and at
Yeah.
checkout it says 10.09. No. In Europe, if you buy the product for $100, you buy it for $100. And then you as a business, the government will ask you to pay back VAT.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oh,
The reason why I brought up creating a European company
yeah.
is because if you can do that, then once you order stock, you can do some accounting tricks and get some of the VAT back to where you're not losing almost a quarter of your revenue into some random European taxes. So if you're a European company,
Yeah.
you import products, you have your own VAT number, you can reclaim VAT as well from the government. That's why it might make more sense. Like once you do the test, you see
Yeah.
the products are selling well, perfect. You can move forward and open up a company there. I would recommend it. I would look at some structures. Um, then to take a step back, go back to what I was talking about. So take your landing page, adjust it,
Yeah.
translate it. Take your ads, adjust them, translate them. Set up Molly, set up the VAT number or the equivalent if you're a foreign overseas company.
Yeah.
Then what you can actually do to make things easier, start off by doing a product launch.
Okay.
That's something we've done. We did it for a company selling in Canada.
Yeah.
They were going in there from New Zealand. We also use these product launches for all the existing companies. And we had a company selling in Lithuania, Manila. We did
Yeah.
136k euros with just
Yeah.
one email send. And on how we got to these product launches. Product launches, brand launches, they're very similar.
Yeah.
They're also very similar with sales and the sales we launched for Q4. That'll probably be the easiest way to start. The reason why I bring this up is because with the product launches, you don't necessarily have to order stock because you don't want to invest, let's say $50,000
Yeah.
into opening a brand in Germany for it not to work, and then you lose
Right.
$50,000.
Right.
Instead, you could probably invest 10, 15, and only once you see it work, you can start ordering stock, ordering inventory, and start scaling.
Yeah.
With these product launches, typically the way we do them is we separate them out into like in this case, 5 main phases.
Okay.
The first phase is the calculations.
Okay.
The calculations is something that I've done with brands we work with in Europe, and I
Yeah.
just look at the economics, like what are the products? How
Right.
quickly can we ship them to Europe?
Right.
What's the price point for the products? Like
Right.
what are your cost of goods? So on and so forth.
Yeah.
Then I roughly estimate what would be your cost per acquisition, your CPA. A lot of
Right.
times you can get it lower than it would be in the US. Ads are less competitive here, which is a bonus. Then once we've done that, we dive
Yeah.
into what we call internally the product launch formula. That's what we've done with a lot of the businesses we work with. Um, for Manila, the skincare company, what we
Yeah.
did essentially was phase one was hyping people up, getting people excited. In
Yeah.
your case, for a new brand's launch, they'll be starting to run ads that basically push people into an opt-in page. Very importantly, not legion ads
Yeah.
on Facebook, for example, but conversion ads where the primary metric is getting leads, and that's being done through people signing up on the site. So running ads there. building some brand awareness. So people know you're legit. You could even do some influencer campaigns. A
Right.
great example of this was a brand called not Best Secret, but About You.
Yeah.
What they did uh, a month before they even started selling anything, they bought TV ad slots. They did partnership deals with multiple biggest influencers in the
Huh.
country, in the field, and they basically got their name out there, so where people knew who they were.
Yeah.
They had more trust while buying for them, before buying from them. I estimate they probably spent could have been around 20-ish K just on
Huh.
ads with no ROI upfront
Yeah.
on just building the brand awareness. I'm not saying you have to do that. You can be a bit more conservative and you can put more money into performance marketing,
Right.
which is what we did. Because with the hype up we drove traffic to a landing page, and
Yeah.
after the landing page, once we get their email,
Yeah.
we let them pre-order either your main product or let them pre-order different SKUs. The landing page clearly states that the product might be shipped in, let's say, 5 weeks, something like that, depending on your lead time.
Yeah.
But that way, we're able to see and validate whether people are buying the product or not. We had a brand that was launched in Netherlands. We
Yeah.
ran the same strategy. We invested around 10,000 and we generated around 15K
Right.
as a first product launch, just to see if there's a market for your product, just to see if your current ads work, if you need to rework advertising, and just see if, like, we need to just landing page, so on and so
Right.
forth. Where are people dropping off? That's what we did there. I kind of skipped ahead with some of the results.
Yeah.
But to take a step back, yes, you have this hyper period. After that, you have the pre-sale, which I mentioned,
Yeah.
which is done via emails and also via landing page. Then you have the big sale launch, which is when you launch the site to the public, you
Yeah.
launch the site to the entire email list you've collected, and then you have follow-ups, where you follow up with people who haven't converted,
Yeah.
retarget them, send them emails, and as simple as that, you instead of you spending 50, 100, 300K to enter a market, you might have done it for 10K, right? 10, 15K, again,
Yeah.
based on your cost of goods, and then you get people to pay for your product before you ship it out. So
Right.
then you don't have, a bunch of products stuck in a warehouse somewhere. You don't
Yeah.
have to pay VAT on the
Yeah.
product, because that's something as well. If you order stock for 100K, you're gonna need to pay 21% on that. And yeah, that's my recommendation on how you can actually get started in these markets, like a more actionable guide.
So very interesting, and there are too many different layers there that we can take, but I'm actually going to touch on some of them. So number one, you mentioned the VAT, and from the VAT
Yes,
perspective, 21%, or maybe 16 to 23% is what you mentioned. In
yes,
my case, when we are in either New York, California, or here in Canada, the maximum that we have paid so far is like 13 percent, or
yes,
maybe
sales
16.
tax.
That's a max, and
Hmm.
we feel that we are paying a lot more, but you guys are paying
Yes,
way too much, I guess.
that is
So
true.
overall, from the VAT perspective, you mentioned some of the tricks in terms of businesses that they might be able to save. So how does that process work? Is it similar to the US and Canada, where typically what businesses can do is you are going to be looking at, okay, how much is the VAT that is your outgoing versus what you have paid to the vendors? You deduct in terms of what is remaining, and you really
Exactly that.
go on that. Okay, so you have the similar taxation model.
Yes, exactly the same thing. Exactly the same thing. That's the benefit of having a European company. And the same thing like with European companies,
Yeah.
based on where you're located, for example, in Latvia, in our
Yeah.
country, we don't pay any tax on profit, no tax on revenue. We only pay tax on dividends.
Interesting.
So yeah, like if you're a foreign company, you want to open up, you can do Lithuania.
Yeah.
You can do Andorra. Andorra has zero taxes. Andorra is a bit more difficult, and you need to
Yeah.
have some sort of residency there.
Yeah.
But sorry, Estonia, you can get e-residency, and it can be very simple to open up companies there.
Yeah.
Again, you have no tax on revenue, no tax on profit, only 20% on dividends,
Yeah.
which you can pay out to your main company. And again, like yes, you do have to pay VAT, but then you can write it off. And opening these companies is very simple. You can do it pretty much online. I'm sure you can do it online.
Huh, very interesting. So the other layer that I really wanted to touch is going to be the whole company registration process. And you mentioned, and again, when you are going to be in these countries and when you are opening in the foreign country, even though it might be next door, it is going to be a different country in general, right? So when you are looking at the registration process of the company, typically, if you are going to be, let's say you are Canadian and you are trying to open in the US,
Hmm.
the process is still going to be very difficult. It's not as easy. Okay. So in some countries, I know that, when you look at countries like Philippines, India, you are probably
Hmm.
going to be requiring a resident who is going to be director in your company. Do you know if Germany has the similar guidelines? So let's say if somebody is penetrating Germany market for the first time, for
Yeah,
them, it could be frightening to
yeah.
open a company there, right?
So the only thing that's really frightening is opening a bank account. Bank accounts are
Exactly.
a bigger challenge.
Yep.
Estonia is where you can get it done. Where you can get it done, like the easiest. To be fair, I won't be able to like give comments on, selling from Estonia to
Yeah.
Germany, what
Yeah.
happens there with the VAT situation.
Yeah.
For the most part, it should be okay.
Yeah.
It should be like, you should be able to deduct things and whatnot. Because still, like you're paying that from your company to Germany's government, but
Yeah.
Europe is very connected.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, like yeah, you might need some resident. But a lot of times we have people do open up companies in Latvia. We have a whole register for this. So you open a company under someone else's name,
Yeah.
but you're the actual beneficiary as the
Right.
company. There are ways around it. You can also like the easiest bank accounts to open at the start can be investment banks if you have capital.
Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be a lot easier to open, and they will have direct people who manage your accounts. Or actually, if someone is very serious and interested, I can connect you with someone who can help open bank accounts. They basically have a process. They have people in the banks that can explain the
Yeah.
situation, and get banks open up easier, even if you're a foreigner. It's still a bit more difficult,
Yeah.
but if you see a lot of potential, you can easily scale in these markets. The thing is, you do have VAT, which is more expensive, but cost of ads is not more cheap. So you can have brands that, for example, are in a clothing niche,
Yeah.
and you get like some ridiculous 10x ROAS very consistently.
Yeah.
To where like after VAT everything you might be operating at what the US might be, 3 4x ROAS 5x ROAS, which would be
Yeah.
very very difficult to get.
Okay, so very interesting. So now you keep touching the layer about, ads being not so competitive. And then, I know for a fact that, when you look at the emails, now email as a channel is becoming very hard in general. And you mentioned that,
Hmm.
what you have utilized email only for the brand awareness. If you look at the US market at this point of time, or Canadian market, email in general is becoming very difficult channel because of these spam filters, because they are becoming smarter because of your machine learning AI.
Yeah,
What you can
yeah.
do with email. So I don't know if you guys are experiencing the same, but in your case, I guess email is going to be slightly more difficult. I don't know if you have GDPR everywhere or just in some countries in the Europe, but my understanding is going to be that email is going to be slightly more difficult.
Yeah, so like just answer straight to the core of the
Yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah,
It's GDPR. You can easily track it. Check a box on site. Not difficult. Most of
yeah,
the ESP tools can track consent.
yeah,
It also depends on how like you can. There are ways to kind of gray hat it.
yeah,
I'm not a lawyer. I don't recommend that. But
yeah,
I'm saying like if you're under 100 million a year, pretty much no one cares. But again, I'm not giving this as advice. I'm just saying that from what I've seen, from experience, from looking through like registries of fines. Again, I didn't tell you to do anything gray hat per se.
yeah,
But
yeah,
tracking consent is very simple.
yeah,
You can track it through, for example, if you use Shopify, it'll get pulled into Klaviyo. And then email marketing on the flip side, Europe is a very underutilized tool. We get even pre iOS 15 in
yeah,
Lithuania, for example,
yeah,
we were seeing 60% open rates. Like when I tell you that not a lot of brands are sending emails,
right,
not a lot of brands are sending emails. It is a massive opportunity, massive retention channel that
yeah,
is even more huge than it is in the US, especially in like the Balkan countries, especially in Eastern Europe, Sweden,
yeah,
Netherlands, Germany. You can get insane results. Like if your brand, let's say you do, for example, 1 million a month, let's say you do 200K a month from
yeah,
emails, you have the same thing in Europe, you could do possibly 350, almost 400K a month.
yeah.
So there is a lot of scale to achieve.
Yeah, so very interesting. So now, if we compare this with the US market, at least from my personal experience, when you look at the US or Canada market, getting
Hmm.
email from somebody is extremely hard. So you mentioned that, you did this ad campaign. In our case, in even if we spend on advertising, number one, ads are very competitive, as you have correctly pointed out. But then getting just the email, what people do is they are probably going to put fake email as opposed to the real emails when you
That
so I don't
happens
know if this is
everywhere. That happens everywhere. Like to collect emails, you need to have the right privacy policies. And
right.
for example, you just need a checkbox. As simple as that. Like a lot of times, like if you do less than 100 mil, you can theoretically instead of a checkbox, you can just
Yeah,
say like a small text, "Hey, by signing up, you applied for like you agreed to get marketing messages."
yeah,
Uh, Really, there shouldn't be anyone going after you. But again, if you want to be 100% safe, have a checkbox. It's simple. People are always going to give fake emails. It doesn't matter where you are. You could be, I don't know, like, yeah, you could be in California. If someone's going to give you a fake email, they're going to
yeah,
give you a fake email. It's going to be a real email. It's going to be a real email. It doesn't matter really where you are.
yeah. So from my experience, getting the email itself, people are going to come to the website, they are going to read the content, they are probably going to understand what the product is, and then they're going to probably go somewhere else to be able to buy. So have you used any sort of strategies in getting these emails or getting conversion? Because if you're getting this higher conversion rate, obviously in those regions, so I don't know if this is really the regional difference or it is really your strategy that you employ to be able to get those emails.
It's both. It's 100% both. Our
Okay.
strategy with the opt-ins when the product launches, we had a launch where we did 251K in 24 hours,
Yeah.
and that's because we were using an influencer, and with a couple of her posts, we were able to collect around 50,000 emails.
Yeah.
That's because when we did this brand launch for them, we made it email exclusive, to where people had the incentive to add right the email. It all comes down to the offer. If you don't have a good offer, you're not going to be able to get the right data. That's what it comes down to. If you give someone like a wishy-washy offer,
Yeah.
like there's no incentive for them to read, like leave the right email in there. It also needs to be clearly stated in one way or another that, for example, if we're giving customers a discount, let's
Yeah.
say, on an email pop-up, we should like if they don't enter their real email, they might not see the code. So then they don't have the benefit, right? If they mess up, they mess up. Same with landing page, they might not be able to get access, let's say, to something exclusive unless they put in their real email. And then if once they enter the fake one, then they're like, yeah, I need to actually enter my real one, and then
Yeah.
they do it. It all comes down to the offer there.
Yeah.
Also, European markets, what I talked about, email marketing is just less competitive. So generally speaking, we have looking at other agencies and other people how they do email marketing in Europe, they're not that good compared to the US. We've taken a lot of things we've learned from the US and working with pretty big brands, and we're taking that into Europe. Generally speaking, a lot of people are not that good with emails; they're good with paid ads.
Yeah.
If you can do both, you're awesome.
All right, amazing. So that's it for today. Do you have any last minute closing advice for our listeners?
Yes, crush Q4. Now the recession might be coming. Don't think about how can I cut costs. Think about how can I keep up my spend, but keep up my revenue by diversifying my spend. So that might mean going off Google, going off Facebook, heading into micro influencers, and trying to keep your spend up because really now is a great opportunity to take market share. You will have opportunities to take market share because other people are going to have the scarcity mindset. You
Yeah.
should have the growth mindset. You can, instead of growing, 50%, 100%, you might be growing at 10, 20, 30%, but you're still growing. You're still profitable. Focus on that. Don't think about cutting costs. Focus on how can you spend the same amount of money profitably. What channels can I take? Where can I test it? So on and so forth. You'll be better off than your competitors. You'll be able to scale higher. You'll be able to come back out of the recession better.
Could not agree more. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be there are so many channels, whether you talk about just from the product perspective or from geography perspective or just from the payment processing perspective, there are going to be always opportunities, whether to improve your bottom line or to grow. On that note, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been a powerful episode.
Yes, 100%. So if also someone wants to find me and like ask me any questions about these geos, you can find me at email Reinis, so Reinis on Twitter, Instagram, And also, you could schedule a call with me at Agency JR, agency as an agency, J as in Jacob, R as in Rainis.com/call. So agencygr.com. And email Rainis. Feel free to reach out. I don't bite. I'm more than happy to help out.
Yeah, he indeed does not bite, and we are also going to include this information in the show notes so people can easily find. Again, on that note, thank you so much for your time and insights today.
Thank you. Take care. Adios.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Rainis, head over to agencyjr.com. It's agencyjr.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Robert Giovannini, who shares his insights into the e-commerce nuances for furniture manufacturers. Also, the interview with Jay Schneider, who shares his insights into how B2B digital commerce processes differ from B2C. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.